All right, Elevation Nation, back with another episode of the podcast. We have a really special elevator joining us today, Leonard Armato. I know you're coming all the way from California, the West Coast, but we are excited to get into what you're up to, your story, and the way that you approach life. So, Leonard, welcome to Elevation Nation. We are pumped to have you.
Well, it's such an honor to be. It's hard to get on this show, and so I'm glad my booking agent was able to get me squeezed in there to be a couple of your superstars. Thank you.
Listen, it's a good problem to have that we keep getting introduced to amazing people from other elevators. And that's how we met you, Leonard, with some amazing friends at the Nucleus Network. So shout out to them. And I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more. We've had the chance to connect in the past, but now we get to dive a little bit deeper into your story, into your soul, into your brain, and really hopefully shed some light on some great advice for the next generation of young people and young leaders out there that are really listening to Elevation Nation. So I'm excited to get into things. Obviously, Leonard, Parker and I know about you, about your past, about your history. But for Elevation Nation out there, we like to start every podcast with an elevator pitch. Why don't you tell people who you are?
Well, who I am. I'm Leonard Armato, and I've a long history in sports marketing, branding, and a whole bunch of other endeavors. So my career journey has been very circuitous, but it's been focused primarily in the sports field. First as a sports attorney, then as a sports agent, then as a sports brand marketer. Then I started as a sports entrepreneur, creating the sport of pro beach volleyball, which was a blast, and went over then to Skechers to start their sports performance division as the president of that division and the CMO of the company. So, I've done a lot of things in a lot of places and really enjoyed the journey, and there's more to come.
More to come, and I know you were part of putting a massive beach volleyball court right in front of the Eiffel Tower, right?
Well, that wasn't me. But my history in beach volleyball is, quite long. I actually was a co-founder of the first pro form of the sport, the AVP Pro Beach Volleyball Tour. Ran it for a good number of years when it was only a men's tour. And then it became a men's and women's tour under my leadership. I created the AVP Tour that awarded women equal prize money and equal TV time for the first time in sports history. So that was fun. That was about 20 years ago. Out of that came stars like Misty May and Kerry Walsh, if you remember them, won 3 straight gold medals at the Olympic Games. And the sport is a very, very popular sport for young girls, for youth. And also at the college level, it's now a championship sport at the NCAA level. And we were responsible in part for getting it to into the NCAA, which we're proud of as well.
I mean, throwback to some of those names, powerhouses in beach volleyball. I think that was probably Parker and I's first Olympics that we really were watching and getting invested in it. And I remember with Missy May and Kerry Walsh, my mom being so excited to see them absolutely dominate. So it's so fun to hear you bring up nostalgic names like that. I think Leonard, for Parker and myself, we grew up in athletics. We grew up playing sports. Parker is a diehard Baltimore Ravens fan. I'm a Bulls guy myself, being from Chicago. But sports have such a special place in our hearts. And certainly, as you mentioned, your career has been kind of focused in the sports world. But I'm curious, why sports? What about athletics really drew you to that industry and having such a passion there?
Yeah, so I played basketball in college, and then for cross-training, I played beach volleyball on the beaches of Southern California. So I really loved sports. I loved participating in sports. I became a lawyer, and my college basketball coach encouraged me to represent athletes. He said, look, they're getting screwed right and left. They need someone to guide them, someone to help them, someone to teach them. And my father was a university professor at USC, taught there for 25 years. And I just gravitated towards doing something which would allow me to draw from my sports background and at the same time help these athletes prepare for a career after sports, because that's something that they all needed to do.
I think back to one of the documentaries that came out around athletes and finances and life after sports, and I think about how many of them could have benefited from learning from you and some of the strategies that it takes to not only be an athlete and build a brand, but to build a life for yourself. And I think, as Parker and I now have some friends that we're lucky enough to get connected with that are professional athletes, I always like to talk to them about their personal finance journeys outside of athletics and what they're doing. And I hope our generation is a little bit more open-minded to learning from people like yourself, because it certainly is not an easy world to navigate when it comes to all the different people asking you for money and pulling you in many different directions.
Well, when I first started, athletes didn't make as much money as they do today. The big athletes in the big sports are making so much money, and athletes have never had more influence in culture than they do today. So it's actually easier today because the money's so big and professional help is readily available to those people that have that kind of money. When I first started, it was sort of like the Wild West of representation, and a lot of athletes were getting screwed. Their careers were short, and they were ending up penniless. So that doesn't happen as much anymore because the money's so big and because there's so much professionalism that surrounds the sport now. It's evolved quite a bit. But certainly athletes should be in a situation where they maximize their potential. I mean, that's one of the things I've always tried to impart to the people that I work with, especially athletes. You've got to do everything you can to maximize your potential because you've been given so many different God-given blessings. You have to use those at the highest level. And it all starts with building a personal culture for greatness. Sort of almost like, we create like a manifesto. The manifesto tells you how to live. It gives you sort of a guiding light, a North Star to govern every single conduct that you engage in throughout the course of the day, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a friendship. So I really believe in a personal culture and using that personal culture to maximize your potential.
I think, where this conversation's going, I'm really excited. But, I think I'm really curious, Leonard, the last 6 years in particular around personal branding, especially in the sports world, has changed a lot because of the cell phone, right? You have probably people who have bigger personal brands on sports teams who don't even see the court compared to other people who are playing and the ones who are actually the ones scoring the points. But yet the ones who are off the court making the most money could be, you have, I don't know, I look at Livy Dunn, right? Incredible personality, but is she the star of the gymnastics team? I don't think she is. And I'm curious your take on where branding is now in the sports world and how it's changed.
Yeah, well, so let's just look for a second at the evolution of the athlete in brand and in culture. So originally athletes were basically used to endorse products, going all the way back to like Babe Ruth appearing in newspaper ads for like hot dogs or whatever he used to do. And then you got to Michael Jordan, who became the ultimate pitchman on television, doing all kinds of great advertising and, got so many different deals in so many different places. And then we came along with Shaq, and we kind of transformed the way that athletes were marketed. And instead of just being pitchmen, they could own their own IP, their own intellectual property, their own brand. They could license it to other companies that wanted to associate with them, and then they would control the narrative. And then it continued to evolve so that athletes became media companies. So they not only were able to be utilized by brands in terms of their name, image, and likeness in, let's say, television commercials or marketing campaigns, but these athletes can reach directly their fans through their social platforms. So it made them increasingly more valuable. And in today's world, as you think of yourself as an athlete, you think of yourself as a media company who can create content, who can reach people directly, who can become something that stands for the content that they represent. And it's really evolving in a huge way. Now athletes are not only media companies, they're production companies attracting other projects. And then they also are involved in the world of financing because people want to be in business with athletes who are involved in many different things in culture. So the athlete, let's call it influence in culture, has never been greater, and it's only going to continue.
I remember I must have been in a Sports Illustrated for Kids article back when I was little. That used to be what I read every single month. I remember hearing an article about LeBron and LeBron going in and investing in a company. And then LeBron turning around in that same company and being the spokesperson for it. And I think that was my first time, as I've always had an interest in business as a young kid, kind of understanding the direction that I think we were headed with athletes being brands and being so strategic with how they're investing now. And I think you're spot on, Leonard. We are just getting started with how athletes and influencers, college athletes, and now even younger levels. I don't know if you're familiar with on TikTok, there's a junior athlete called Baby Gronk. If you're familiar, seeing that kid's videos, the dad has marketed the son and made a ton of money off of his kid. And so there are all these interesting new ways that I think people are using social media to help them grow their own personal brands. And I'll pivot it now to what's a little bit more, I guess, relatable for our audience, right? We certainly have some college athletes that listen to us, but I would say the majority are more like me and Parker, young adults trying to figure it out, college students, high school students, and recent graduates. And I want to ask you, Leonard, how you think you've seen athletes build their personal brands and how those same practices can be used for someone who's everyday and normal like myself in Elevation Nation to still make a strong brand presence.
Well, you can't, because you don't have the platform that the athlete has.
Sure.
If you did, then you would just use that platform to do the very same things I was talking about. You'd be a media company, you'd use your brand to connect up with other, let's call it like-minded companies or brands that have a similar sort of ecosystem as you. But it all kind of starts, as I mentioned, with a personal culture, because a personal culture can be reflected in a brand positioning. So what do you stand for? What are your core values? What are those things that you can connect up with other companies that have similar beliefs, that have similar types of values? That will determine what kind of partnerships, strategic relationships you should have, and it goes from there. Now, you don't have to be an athlete to build a brand that really has value. Look at Mr. Beast, for example. He's not an athlete, but he's got a massive brand, and he does deals with companies that have this, share the same core values that he does. But that's really it. You start with your personal culture, your brand positioning, you grow your platform, you grow your influence, you get involved with companies where you can use their money to build your brand, their marketing to grow value in your IP, and then you continue to evolve from there. Make sense?
I think it's great advice. I know Parker wanted to jump in, but I think for a lot of our young people, really quickly, Parker, they look at a lot of those college athletes and their brands and have immense envy at what they've been building. And I think you're spot on that we don't have necessarily that level of notoriety or reach, and that's okay. I think for our generation that maybe is a little bit more normal in building their personal brands, you can find a niche where you can get your voice out there is something that I've found has worked for us. And it's really one of the reasons we do Elevation Nation and we've started creating content on our own is I know I'm not 6'6" and can do a 360 windmill. Trust me, I've had many, many dreams where I thought that was going to be the case, but I stopped growing, unfortunately, thanks to my parents. So we're at this reality now, and Parker and I have figured out new ways to elevate our brands, and it's certainly not through dunking. So go ahead, Parker. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask a question, Leonard, around, Sam and I we ask a bunch of deep introspective questions about ourselves and where we're going with our career journey, our personal journey, of course, Elevation Nation, and how we're building the Elevation Nation brand. So I'm curious for you, for our listeners who are trying to develop their own personal brand, what are some questions that you would have them ask themselves?
Well, I think what you've got to do is understand your core values, and then I would sit down on a mountaintop and create a manifesto. And I did that for our company, and we worked on that, and it turned out to be really nice. And I can, tell you our manifesto if you like. It's a really interesting, sort of way to govern every single thing that you do in your life, business, personal, and friendships. So our manifesto at MPE is as follows. Our chief aim is to improve the lives of others and enable greatness in everyone. We inspire each other by working with remarkable people on remarkable things. Always leading with humility, not ego, compassion, not judgment, and love, not fear. that's our manifesto.
It's almost like the grounding mechanism that always brings you back. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we waking up every day? And I'm sure it's real, when you share that with people you work with, they're like, wow, I know what Leonard and his team are about.
And it works for everybody. It works dealing with you guys. It works dealing with, big superstars, whether it's a Shaquille O'Neal or anybody like that. It works dealing with someone who's facing challenges in their life. If you think about enabling greatness in people, how do you bring out the best in every single person that exists in your life? And if you do that, if you govern your conduct by that lens, you're going to do things that are going to make an impact in a positive way. And I think that's something that you can always keep with you every single moment of the day as you go throughout the course of business.
Well, it sounds certainly similar to something that we've been on a mission to develop here at Elevation Nation. And Leonard, I'll fill you and the audience in on what we've been developing. I know you've heard our story, but Parker and I, friends from University of Maryland, graduated and got jobs in Big Four consulting, and we're pretty depressed and miserable and lost with what we wanted to do. And we kind of talked to a lot of people like yourself and figured out that we thought the missing piece for young people was what we call mental fortitude. We found that that was something that was not taught to us in school, but everyone who is really successful, like yourself, had this concept of mental fortitude. And so now we go around the country helping young people activate their own mental fortitude, which is knowing who they are, their vision, and what fuels them. And so we're on a mission to really help spread that message, because I think, unfortunately, with the new social media era and COVID that prevented a lot of our young people from being able to interact and work on those EQ skills, I think a lot of them are lacking that mental fortitude that many of us take for granted.
Yeah, well, let's just dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Mental fortitude. I mean, that's a very focused statement, because fortitude has to do with strength. A little bit, relates to like perseverance. And, you probably heard about the Harvard study that says the most important characteristic you can have to be successful is to have the quality called grit, which is
absolutely, Angela,
things over a long period of time. But I think one of the most important things that people need to think about is what career are they going to pursue, and does it have like the 4 Ps attached to it? Does it feel like play? Do you enjoy it? Does it have a purpose? Do you feel like, oh, this is something I feel good about when I put my head on the pillow at the end of the day? Next one is, does it fulfill my God-given potential? Everything that I have the capability of doing, am I fulfilling it through my career? And finally, I got to get paid. So the final P is, you got to make money doing it, otherwise you're going to be really struggling. So, you've heard about the struggling artists that are out there. It's tough. So if you ask yourself, do the 4 Ps exist in my life? And they do, then you're on to something that you should just continue to pursue. If they don't, you got to start to question whether you want to continue that journey. Once you get into the position where you've got those things going on, it's a lot easier to develop fortitude. It's a lot easier to develop perseverance and grit, because it's something that you have your heart in. And having your heart in something is so absolutely important.
I can't, first of all, Leonard, I appreciate you sharing those 4 Ps. I think that's an incredible framework, first of all. I love it. I can't imagine how many people, especially in their 20s, have play, purpose, and potential down, in a sense. But the one thing that they are lacking is play. Pay, right? They're waking up every day. They're doing what they love. They're driven. They're inspired by what they do, but they're not getting paid for it. And this, I feel like, is such a challenge that Sam and I hear consistently, that people are saying, pursue your passion, pursue your passion, pursue your passion, but it's not paying. So as a result, it becomes less about their passion. It's like, damn, I can't make any money off this. I'm going to stop.
Well, it's interesting. It depends on what your definition of getting paid is, because some people can get by in a little bit and be really happy, and then others are, I got to, make a lot of money, otherwise I don't feel comfortable with what I'm doing. So the whole, maybe you reverse it and you put pay as the first one, and you just decide, what can I make a living at that I love doing? I mean, maybe that becomes the first question, because if you can't make a living at all at what you are passionate about, then it's just a hobby. So if it's a hobby, then it's a different thing than a career. So, that's the way you need to approach it. And if you want to have a career involves getting paid to the point where it is actually something that you can live on comfortably, given your lifestyle aspirations. If it isn't, then it's a hobby. So you just got to decide, where in your set of, let's call it priorities, it all fits in.
and I'm going to add a fifth P here, which is pivot. And I want to bring it to your story, Leonard. You obviously have had an incredible career and have continued to move into different roles. Were those four Ps what you kind of looked at as an inflection point? If one of them were lacking, that you determined it was time to pivot and go to a new opportunity?
Yeah, there's two ways a new opportunity can arise. And one of them is through failure, and one of them is through just having some of the four Ps lacking, and you just realize, I need to move on to something different. So the thing that I always like to tell young people is that failure is something that will be a part of your life on every level from now until the end of time, until you're no longer with us, because it's just part of the circle of life that happens in business. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but for the most part, you've got to look at failure as almost an ally in your life, because there's three things that failure does. The first thing it does is it just, number one, you learn from it. Oh my gosh, I failed, and this is why, and I'm going to learn from it so it doesn't happen to me next time. Second, it motivates you. What is the most famous story of someone being motivated by failure? I know you're both a sports fan, so you better get this right. Tell me. The most commonly repeated story about the way that failure motivates. I'll give you a hint. He was the greatest basketball player in history.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it Michael Jordan?
Yeah, Michael Jordan got cut by
of course.
a basketball coach, okay? And it got him so pissed off he decided to become the greatest player ever. No, but
wouldn't that be nice? Snap your fingers and...
Yeah, no, motivation. And then the final piece is opening new doors, because when you fail and all of a sudden you got to go somewhere else, a new door might open. The new door might be better than the door that you walked through. So that's why failure, some people have to embrace it. And most great, if not all great entrepreneurs, all great success stories have lots of failure stories along the way.
I think I'm getting to the point where I'm like, Sam, failure, I always say, Sam, is like failure is a win-win, right? You either, you go for it and you fail and it's like, all right, well, now I know I have to pivot, or it's like, wait, I learn and I can stay and continue to build. And so, we failed a bunch, and I think what's great about mental fortitude and instilling it in young people is that if you have the mental fortitude, you can push yourself outside the comfort zone to continue to push when it gets hard, because it's inevitable.
There's no doubt. I completely agree with that. That's a great way to look at it. It's a great way to look at it. So let's talk a little bit about women's sports. You want to do that? Because
let's do that. We were going to go there, but you read our mind. Let's talk about what jazzes you up about women's sports right now.
Well, I've represented lots of women over time in addition to representing men. So I represented Lisa Leslie when we launched the WNBA. Carrie Walsh Jennings managed her when she was winning 3 gold medals at the Olympic Games. And the sport of beach volleyball, as I mentioned to you, I gave women equal prize money and TV time long before it was popular. That was 20 years ago or so. So right now, there's this incredible movement in our culture to support women's sports. And I'll tell everybody out there, I think the women's sport with the greatest upside potential is volleyball, because more girls play volleyball than any other sport. It's beautiful to watch. The visual is fantastic, and it has gotten the least amount of attention. So I think right now there's ratings that are going up for volleyball, great athletes that are playing volleyball and beach volleyball, and it's a sport that I think can really grow dramatically over the next few years and ultimately down into the future. The nice thing is that for the first time, really, media companies and brands are making it a priority to invest in women's sports. So that's why the opportunity is very timely, because timing is so important with everything.
I think we've seen just within the past 6 months in a huge growth in women's sports and media coverage. Mm-hmm. And I hope that continues to grow. Certainly, we've heard all about volleyball and its rise in popularity. Leonard, we had on another elevator, so someone similar to yourself, one of the head announcers for a different volleyball league that I won't mention because they may be a rival to you guys, although it's indoors.
No, you can mention.
Okay. The VLA, so we had on their lead play-by-play announcer, a great guy, Rob St. Clair, and he was also so passionate about getting the sport of volleyball out in front of more people. Mm-hmm. So many people, as you know, play it, but many people haven't seen it at the highest level being played. And to your point and Rob's point, it's a beautiful game to watch when it is competitive and played at the highest level.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
I remember growing up, I'd throw in like ESPN too and watch what Penn State women's volleyball. I forget, they were incredible. Like they
Crazy.
could not lose. And it was fascinating to watch because this ball is going across the net 1,000 miles an hour, and for some reason they're able to keep it up. It's inspiring. It's incredible. And now, I mean, more so than ever, to your point, to the point earlier, is there's a beach volleyball court that is literally going to be in front of the Eiffel Tower at the Olympic Games, and who's not going to want to watch that, regardless if it's a man or a woman?
Yeah, it's very cool. Totally.
So, Leonard, with that, you spoke a little bit about what you've done with women's sports, specifically volleyball. But what is coming up next for you? Obviously, women's sports is a passion for you. You have a lot of cool things on the horizon. What can people look out for coming from you and your team?
Well, I've done a lot of things we talked about youth sports, and now young people can make money playing sports, whether it's high school or college. And so that's a whole new era that's being ushered in, and it's really the Wild Wild West. So I really enjoy it when the Wild West exists and you can carve out sort of an interesting new path in that Wild Wild West. So I really have an eye on that. I'm helping and managing what I think is the best female athlete in college sports. Her name is Madison Skinner, the University of Texas volleyball player who was MVP of the NC2A tournament last year, won 3 national championships already. She's going for her 4th this year. University of Texas is #1. She's amazing. She's not only an incredible athlete, she's also a supermodel. I mean, she's got the whole package. So look out for Madison Skinner. She's amazing. And then I'm working on the women's volleyball vertical side, indoor volleyball, beach volleyball, figuring out ways to grow it. And I think it's the next big thing in sports, and it'll be fun to help build it. And I love building new things. Is that good?
We can't wait.
Are we good? Have we hit it all?
We've hit it all, but we got one more section for you. We ask every single elevator who joins the nation one thing that everyone in the nation has is called a mental motto. It's a phrase, a quote, a slogan that you live your life by. I have my mental motto. Sam's got his mental motto. And all the other 180 elevators have a mental motto as well. So, Leonard, we're curious, do you have a mental motto?
Of course, I already read it to you in the form of my manifesto: improve the lives of others, enable greatness, and work with remarkable people. That's it right there. Enable greatness, improve the lives of others, and work with remarkable people on remarkable things.
Well, you certainly are one of those remarkable people. Leonard, we are so honored to welcome you to the nation. We can't thank you enough for the time, and we look forward to learning more and seeing what you got coming up next.
Hey, so it'd be great, guys, if you sent me like some clips, little short clips.
Absolutely.
I could put up on